All right. So, good morning, everyone.
Morning.
That was okay. I'm learning with you.
Yes.
So, as usual, before starting our lecture, that will be given by our friend Tiago and is an understanding of life, we will do our initial prayer and reading with our friend Raquel.
Good morning. The reading today is from the book Happy Life from Divaldo Franco. Tolerate your neighbor's failings and do not place them in the gossip mill. We all make mistakes. Wise is the man who learns to act decently from his mistakes. When someone is down, give him your hand. Do not criticize him. Nobody falls because he wants to. If he does, the culprit is ignorance, a cruel enemy of man. Even so, the one who has fallen deserves help, not a reprimand. So let's now close our eyes and continue with our thoughts elevated. Let's be thankful for the opportunity of being here together one more time to learn a little bit more about Jesus' teachings. Let's ask that all the good spirit inspire our friend Tiago, that he may be able to disseminate everything he studied to put this lecture together for us. Let's ask to open our minds and our hearts so we may be able to absorb as much as possible from today's teachings. Thank you, so be it.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Very glad to have you all here in this very Sunday. It is nice, it is warm. It rained a little bit, so then it cooled off. Now it's getting warm again. And thank you for being here because it shows that, no matter what's going on outside, we want to learn. We want to continue growing. We want to continue improving. I reflected a lot on today's lecture because today's lecture is about life, but every life presents challenges. Therefore, talking about life is talking about challenges. And also talking about life in a spiritist center means many things. We can think about life in so many different dimensions. And we're going to try to touch upon a few of them, but never forgetting. And that is something that while I was reading about the lecture today, I try to remind myself constantly to look at this theme with the eyes of my spirit. And I will invite you to do the same. If we confine ourselves understanding challenging things with our earthly eyes, chances are we will be very opinionated. That's okay. We'll be very passionate. Sometimes it's okay. But also, we may, through those opinions, through this passion, we may lose track of what life is for us as immortal spirits in constant process of evolution. That is the only disclaimer that I want to give, because thinking about an understanding of life will lead us to talk about a very challenging theme. Has always been challenging, and in this day and age, in 2025 Christian era, is very, very contentious, which is abortion. And why didn't I decide to put this word here from the beginning? Because looking at especially challenging themes only from a narrow perspective will always lead us to contention, will always lead us to misunderstanding. And one thing that is important for us, in Spiritism we learn that there is no prohibitions, there are no dogmas, there is no judgment, and there is no crime. There is understanding, there is learning, there is compassion. 2 weeks ago, I was here giving a lecture, and I was mentioning about two words that keep hitting me constantly. And that day, we were talking about specific themes, and two words come always to mind: curiosity and compassion. Curiosity, because we don't know everything. Not curiosity like to be sneaky, to get to know. No, that's not it. To be curious is to have our eyes open, to be interested, right? Not to shy away from talking about things. And also compassion. Because when we talk about challenging themes, we will talk about things that hurt. And if I'm talking about something that hurts, the minimum that I need to have is the respect for those who hurt because of that. And because we are immortal spirits in constant process of evolution, chances are many of us already were challenged by experience, if not the same, similar or analogous to that. Because we are here in one of many existences, playing many different roles, having the opportunity to, through the roles that we occupy in life today, do the best that we can. Then we can start in the very basic question, what is life then? And that contention starts right here, right? Like we start badly. What is life? Ask a biologist. Ask our friend doctor right there. Ask a philosophist. Ask a religious person. And then we open. Which religion? Which faith? Which understanding? Right? Life is something that probably we are always going to look at with that marvel, with wonder, with that curiosity, trying to find that outside and within. If we look simply from three different perspectives, and those three perspectives are very important for our lecture today. First one is in biology. And again, I'm not here to give a lecture. I'm not a biologist, but let's say that summarizing a lot of the readings that I did, the functioning of organic structures that can perform certain acts, that also go through a process of existence from its conception to its destruction, and has metabolism, and has growth, and has reproduction, performs lots of different acts, and dissolves itself. Okay, that's one understanding. If we look at life from a philosophic point of view, that changes everything. Because philosophers would say, biologically may say that you are alive, but philosophically, no. Many of us continue dead. They would say life only exists when that biological organism has meaning, has purpose, has self-awareness, places itself in the world, has, for some other, intentionality. We can say so many things. So there is a graduation of dimensions that we can look at when we look at life. And then we bring to the realm of spirituality, not religion. Let's remember, religion is one of the ways that we organize, codify, make sense, and classify spirituality. For spirituality, usually life represents the endless journey of the soul. The endless journey that we all do to try to find ourselves. It is a journey to find ourselves. And it's also a journey of understanding, a journey of learning, a journey of sharing. Right? Depending which discipline you adopt in your life. If you are a social worker, if you are a biologist, if you are a psychologist, if you are an engineer, right? Life is very important for an engineer, because if the building falls on top of life, life is over. Right? Imagine that on Earth, just if we think about our planet, right? Life is approximately 3.8 billion years old. It started by something called abiogenesis, which was, some would say, the spontaneous generation of life based on specific conditions on Earth back then. Temperature, the molecules that were around, the components, the minerals, the chemical components, and certain other factors like magnetism and electricity generated the opportunity for certain organic matter to aggregate and organize itself more and more and more complex. And learning how to perform different acts, even to sustain itself. But also, when we think about life, and when we start looking at life from those different dimensions, there was a time when the primitive humans, still billions and billions of years after, were living almost in a similar way as the primitive beings of the very first abiogenesis. They were instinctively reproducing, instinctively performing actions, instinctively aggregating themselves. But slowly, life started gaining something called a consciousness. So we started becoming awake for what and who we are. From the biological life, pure and simply moved by those instinctive functions, slowly something like a consciousness started to appear. The recognition of oneself. Imagine how shocking may have been for the first human to look at the reflection on a lake. Let's remember, there was no mirror there. And then we don't remember that sometimes. Imagine trying to fulfill one of those instinctive needs. I need to drink. I need to be alive. And looking and recognizing something. Probably first afraid, or trying to protect itself, trying to attack its own image. And then slowly recognizing that probably looks like me, so probably it is one of them that are with me there. And then suddenly mimicking me. And there was the beginning of that awakening for us to recognize that we are us. Life is incredibly complex. I'm saying that because we don't need to go that far to be marveled, to stop in awe of what life is. When we start bringing the conceptions the definitions, the understanding that Spiritism gives to us, we will then start making sense of all this process. Life is made of different components to be what we have today. To say that we are alive, we need to have a confluence of so many different factors that need to play in harmony. We need to have the physical principle, the biological principle. We need to have what we call that consciousness. Today, what physics talks about consciousness. That's what Spiritism has been calling for many, many centuries, of the spiritual principle. And then we have that link that allows us to be living in this specific planet with those specific conditions, with this temperature, with the oxygen mixed with hydrogen and carbon dioxide that we breathe. There are so many different factors that play for us to be alive. Life is incredibly complex. Then we deepen a little bit. And here, that's when, I try, and I just make an invitation for us to look at it from a very, very compassionate, with the eyes of the Spirit. Imagine life on earth. Imagine how us as human beings were created. We know that a human being is created only out of two cells. And then you would say, that's true, right? That is the egg, that is the spermatozoid. Really? That is a curveball that I've learned while I was studying. And that's why we need to look at it from the eyes of the Spirit. In approximately 2021-22, there was a lot of news talking about a research. And in a lab, the researchers were able to generate an embryo, which is us in the very beginning when we put those cells together, out of two female cells. They were able to do that. So then there was a lot of conversation about it. Do we really need the male counterpart for life to be generated? I'm saying that because probably remember that part. And then a couple of years after, there was another groundbreaking research. And in a lab, an organism was created out of two male cells. Life is incredibly complex. Life is not limited to our narrow earthly understanding of dualities, of left and right, of male, female. Life transcends all of that. Today, all of that and all within a spectrum is part of what life is. That's why it is important for us to look at it and understand that what was true 40 years ago in our lives, in our science, is not anymore. There is much more to it. And when we look at life, in one point in life, life was created at birth, and then at conception, and now probably in a lab. Could an organism that was created in a lab lead to a life like ours? Why not? A mouse was created with a human ear in its back. because there was research being done that a mouse can have a very important role to try to replace an ear that was damaged in a human. Sounds bizarre, but that's what life continues being surprising, shocking, because life is way beyond even our own understanding today. What we know today to be true, tomorrow we don't know. Life is marvelous, shocking, beyond our understanding. There are so many advancements. The important thing is, we always say, what is the most important thing? Is it the advancements themselves? Is it the discoveries themselves, or our conduct before those advancements? The use that we make of our lives and how we relate to life beyond our own. And that's when we start looking at life not only from an individual perspective, not from a biological perspective, but from a transcendental perspective that involves the spiritual, that involves the one that probably is still unknown to us. And I always am marveled by this picture, which has to do with the creation. It is relational. Life actually doesn't exist on its own. Doesn't exist on its own. If we look back, even in the first allegories and metaphors of life that we know today, where do they come from? They come from the Genesis, back then. In the sixth day, God looks at all this beautiful place that he created, right? Remember, let's look with the eyes of the immortal spirit. Are those days? No. Are those simple night and days like ours, 6 times 24? No. Those are eras of evolution, eras of the development of our solar system, our planet, life, from abiogenesis to more complex beings. We go to all the biology with all the species, from the unicell to pluricell organisms, from the fish to the amphibians to the reptiles to the aviary beings to the mammals. Sorry, it just left me. And then we look at what is called the metaphor of the sixth day, which is the creation of Adam. What is Adam? Adam was the name for the generic name for human. Remember, folks, we are here talking about spiritism, not spiritists. We can talk about Adam and complain that the male counterpart was created first. We don't know. We know that Adam, which means humankind, was created, appeared, was brought to existence. Right? And that is a very important point. In this passage, in this metaphor, in this story of creation, there is a beautiful little poem there. There's poems everywhere. Those were chants. Imagine people working in the fields and chanting what today we know as the Old Testament. Like, gives me goosebumps just to think about it. That the people were working to feed each other and to sing about how they came about to be. That's what it is. That's the beauty of it. There was the science of the time. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created. It's a poem of life. It's a poem of us. Because it starts from male and female. And then it goes to Adam. It goes to humankind. And then it goes to Eve. And Eve is actually the representation of Mother Nature, the nurturing aspect of life. Adam needs Eve. Our lives need nurturing. Humankind needs to feed itself from biological food from our bodies, but also nurture ourselves from, and still in the book of Genesis, called the breath of God. We are animated by the breath of God, which is today we call vitality. We need to be animated with vitality. There are many organisms that can function autonomously. There are bodies, our bodies, if we put them in a machine, they will be there sometimes for years. Is there vitality? Is life only that? When we think about that allegory, that metaphor of the breath of God, we understand that there is more than simply that biological life. God was not, in that allegory, God was not satisfied with simply creating Adam and Eve. God needed to animate. And remember, there is that philosophical aspect there. It gives us the meaning. It gives us the purpose. And God comes to Adam and Eve and say, procreate, live, take care of everything. Isn't that meaning and purpose? Isn't that same philosophy that we're talking about? You are here, but you are here not by chance, and you are here not for nothing. You are here more than simply to exist. We understand today in many different ways. Spiritism tells us, and have been telling us for a while, science is slowly coming to that same direction, that we are more than our physical body. Many biochemists, physicists, especially, certain realms of physics also, are studying the fact that consciousness survives or stays existent for longer than the death of the physical body. So we are very slowly coming to that place to understand that that spiritual life that we talk about is what science today calls consciousness. It's there beyond the physical body. We also understand through Spiritism that for us as spirits who are actually inhabitants of the universe, to be in different planes of existence or in different planets, we need to dress ourselves with components of this specific sphere or planet in order to take advantage of the environment. So without having a perispirit that is proper to Earth, we wouldn't be able to breathe the air that we breathe, for instance. We wouldn't be able to nurture ourselves with the food that we have here. If we move to another planet, which is another lecture, we would probably have different ways to nurture ourselves, to sustain our bodies, to create that harmony between body and spirit. That's what is called the perispirit. We understand in Spiritism that the soul is the incarnate spirit. We understand that today we are beyond that duality, body and spirit. We are beyond the duality of almost everything today. In the 21st century, we are breaking down the barriers of what duality is. Man, woman, black, white, left, right. No. Spirits are beings in evolution, occupying many different roles within that range that goes from one extreme that today we call male, the other call female, from one extreme that is called rich to the other extreme that's called poor. But we are all there, constantly occupying different roles within that realm. And more, life today, we know it is a collaboration. Not of a duality, but a collaboration. It is a divine and human collaboration. We help providing the body. The spirituality helps providing the spirit. Life is. Coming to one of the most contentious themes of our modern society, we cannot forget, first of all, how to go back to the basis, to the foundation of understanding of life, its beginnings and its consequences is for Spiritism, because this enlightens us and also brings us a more expanded view on that. Especially because when we talk about those things, we talk about rights, we talk about who even can talk about it. In a modern society today, I understand perfectly that probably I would not be the most appropriate person to talk about it. At the same time, when we look at this theme or other themes with the eye of the Spirit, that reminds me of a song. It is in Portuguese, but I will give a very free translation on that. There is an artist called Chico César in Brazil. And there is a song, and one of the most powerful phrases of this song is, I know how to step on a woman's heart. I was a woman once. That's why I know. Chances are, if I am here learning about life and about the challenges of life and including interruption of life, I also need to learn about that. I also need to redeem myself, probably. And I also need to evolve on my own understanding, like everybody else's understanding, as spirits in evolution, occupying different roles, sometimes in a more masculine and a more feminine, with or without the ability to conceive and also to interrupt life. And this is a lesson for us as spirits. So hopefully, I will remember a little bit a lesson of today. If in my next existence, I come with the ability and the challenge and the dilemmas that many people who we all know, who have experienced, are experiencing, or will experience that dilemma in their lives. Because life is a challenge. And as we learn in ethics, dilemma doesn't have a right or wrong answer. Dilemmas have different courses that are constantly readjusted. And it's never going to satisfy 100% of any need. And looking from the point of view of Spiritism, the ethics that Spiritism gives to us, we are able to look at it with a more compassionate eyes, with more open eyes, with expansive eyes, with the eyes of less judgment, with the eyes of less criticism, with the eyes of less criminalizing. This belongs to the human justice, to the laws that are as imperfect as us and continue changing. Look around the world. You won't see one law that will be similar to other about that. We are in so many different places. Allan Kardec dedicates part of one chapter of the Spirit's book on that. And the chapter is called The Return to Corporeal Life. Because here we are talking about what? We as spirits need our incarnation in order to develop ourselves, to improve our qualities, to learn again lessons that we couldn't learn before, to live better with each other. A couple of weeks ago, we were talking about evolution, right? Chances are we are living within those relationships that can be families, can be communities, can be tribes, can be nations, they can be a workplace, and we are evolving together, returning and returning and returning, evolving at every step, picking up where we left to grow. And Allan Kardec asks about the interruption of life, which is called abortion. And remember, abortion is not only the interrupting a human life. Abortion, if a plane is to take off and there is a problem, it's abortion. Right? If a rocket is going to launch, go there to the internet to watch the rockets all the time, abortion. Let's demystify also the meaning of the word. Abortion is interruption. How many times we abort our plans? How many of us carry in our baggage lots of aborted plans and regrets? And that is one of them. And Allan Kardec specifically about human life and the return of this spirit to a corporeal life that is very important for the spirit. He asks, what about the consequences of an abortion? Is he talking about murder? Is he talking about anybody killing each other? Is he talking about anything like that? No. What happens when there is the interruption of that process of return to the corporeal life? The spirits would say the existence is nullified and must start again. And then we stop. The spirits giving that neutral, objective answer, direct answer. If life is interrupted, and life is one of the purposes of our spirit, every time that it is interrupted, what happens? It will start again. Then Allan Kardec gives more steps towards that theme. And then, obviously, he will go to try to discuss and have enlightenment from the spirits about what he calls artificial abortion. Isn't that interesting? He was a scientist. He was trying to bring that with a neutral point of view, not with judgment. Because he asked, is the artificial abortion a crime or not? Is that or not? Because again, there, in many times, is considered a crime for many people. The spirits are very clear, and we all know that a crime is always committed when humans transgress the laws of God. Transgression of the laws of God. First of all, if we look back at the Old Testament, nobody else said, nobody there said, thou shalt not kill. Did you know that? It is thou shalt not murder. It is a little more complex than that. There are more nuances, and there are so many factors that play a role into mitigating or aggravating many circumstances of that. We kill constantly. We eat animals. We kill them. We kill grass when we step over them and make the path to go to work a little bit faster in the middle of the beautiful, field in front of us. Our cells are killed constantly and replaced. But when we are looking at intentionality, that changes the perspective. And when we talk about transgressions of the laws of God, we need to remember that God is love. When we transgress the laws of love, when we don't act lovingly, we make mistakes. And remember, if we make mistakes, what's going to happen? Are we going to burn in hell forever? No, we are going to need to restart. The difference is, let alone the way that we feel when we make a mistake and recognize. Anybody here who made a mistake in their lives can tell me that if it was something very nice to come here and tell everybody I made a mistake, it feels pretty good, right? No, it doesn't. Nobody wants to say that. It is hard enough to tell your pillow when you go to bed, because your pillow is not going to gossip. Right? It is hard enough to put our heads in our bed and not being able to sleep, remembering what we did. Let alone recognize to a point to start again, with the same risks to make more mistakes all over again. That also has to do with those themes, including abortion. Because in this day and age, we are looking at that not from the perspective of simply taking away a life. We remember now that we, in order to grow, need to be connected and interconnected. We are connected with the environment, with each other, with a society that gives or takes opportunities. We are educated, uneducated, we are intellectual, we are ignorant, we are simple, we are complex. None of this allows for any of us to make a direct judgment. We will never grasp the reasons why people do what they do. For instance, the last question on that specific topic, Allan Kardec brings one of the many scenarios, because the spirits are very clear. Today, if we have 8 billion people in the world, there will be 8 billion possible outcomes, consequences, and reasons why we do what we do. For instance, he brings one. If the health of the mother is at risk, what life would be at stake there that is more or less important? The spirits are very clear. It's better to sacrifice the being who does not yet exist than the being who already exists. How interesting, direct, but also very complex is this answer. Are we talking about the 19th century society? Definitely not. Are we talking about the 20th century society? Probably no. The 21st century society? Definitely no. We are constantly changing our understanding. We're constantly changing. We are looking at life in very many different ways. Today, the movements pro and against something like abortion that are historically, socially, gender motivated, that are politically motivated. There are so many different aspects that play a role with that. Today, we look at this as one of the many aspects that involve the progress of humanity to bring back the dignity for all of us. And that's why, in some point, this became also an important point. And when we look at something like abortion on a spectrum, it is important that we recognize as well. It is a spectrum, do you know why? Because it is within something that is called family planning. It is called something that is like reproductive health, reproductive rights. It has to do from the interruption of life to the prevention of an unwanted pregnancy, to the education of future parenting. There's so much within that spectrum that if I am solely looking at it, disconnecting it from the complexity that it has, I would be making a mistake. We will also always be making a mistake. And now comes the aspect that was highlighted to me constantly, over and over and over, while studying this topic. Every single time that I searched for a book, an article, something, there were several characters that came to my mind, constantly came to my mind, almost asking me, talk about us. And I'm looking at, and I'm thinking, it has nothing to do with that. It was, please talk about us. The first one, probably you all know that, the story of the woman that was caught in adultery. The story more or less says that all those in the multitude brought this woman who they said committed a crime. And they said, according to the laws that we have today, because of that crime, she should be put to death. Not only death, a terrible, painful, long, excruciating, humiliating death. And then, not only this happened, but many people back then tried to test Jesus. Which side are you going to take? Because if he picked one side or the other, he would be wrong somewhere. And they were trying to find reasons to take him out of the picture. Because what he said was what I call unsavory. In many ways. What did he say? Okay, you have all those stones. Oh, finally, this one you know, right, Raquel? Good job, good job. A couple of weeks ago, you did that. Now you know, very good. Let's lighten up a little bit. It's been a very heavy topic.
Judging
sorry.
me.
Yes, I am. I'm sorry. Guilty as charged. So then Jesus says, okay, all of those who have that stone in their hand. Easy. You have no crime in your history. You can start. And the story says, one by one, starting from the older to the youngest, very interesting even, they all dropped their stone and quietly. It is also a metaphor, right? More we are wise, because when we call we are elder, like more we are wise, chances are we're gonna come to this conclusion a little bit faster, and we will change faster. We will then accept making the change. We will change our conduct. They may not even have changed their minds, but they changed their conduct. After, obviously, Jesus did that, knowing already what was going on behind him. He knew what was happening, but he looks at this woman and gives his hand to this woman and said, what happened? Where are they? He asked her, where are they? They left. They went away. And he simply looks at her and says, go, you two. Go and sin no more. Did he demonize? Did he judge? Did he criticize? Did he condemn? No. I could only think in that moment Jesus' eyes to this woman in the verge of death. In the verge of death. Nobody knew which story it was. But chances are, was she the only one? When we talk about adultery, do we talking about one only person doing that? Where's the other person?
She did all by herself.
She did all by herself. But everybody was ready to judge one. But imagine Jesus looking at her, giving his hand and telling her, get up. Get up, you mistaken person. Get up, you who probably already is paying enough for humiliation, for regret, for knowing that, you are the person who recognized what happened. Your truth is in the open. What does that mean? When we finally recognize. Why she is there? Because she is the one who recognized. Because other people that were part of that endeavor probably didn't recognize, probably didn't care, probably were completely clueless. But we are not here because we are perfect. We are here because mistaken, we are looking to recognize, feel the consequence of that recognition, and start again. Those are the 3 steps in the book, Heaven and Hell. What does repentance mean? Number 1, the recognition that I did something. Second, facing, in this day and age, we can say, like, facing the music. What does that mean? It means feeling it. And the third is clearing ourselves from the guilt that doesn't allow us to grow and move forward, and then have the opportunity and seek the opportunity to finally do what we in some point couldn't for whatever reason. Which reasons are that? It doesn't matter. What I'm feeling shows me that I may want to do something else. Me. Not you telling me that I need to do anything different. We understand today Spiritism and many other disciplines and the modern, like consciousness tells us, and the state of the world with all the difficulties that we're going through, teach us we need to stop looking at everything from isolated perspectives, out of context. And when we look at lives, it's even more important. Who are us to pretend that we understand the reasoning for what anybody does? There are no dogmas. The words and the terms that were used in the time that those writings existed were appropriate for the time and the people who are reading, in the same way that we talk about it, out of the 613 laws or 31 laws that Moses wrote to people 4,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, 10 of them persist. The other 612 are gone because they were appropriate for their time. They are not appropriate for after. They also change. There is no punishment. We all know who is our only judge? Our conscience. Because the laws of love, the laws of God, the divine laws are printed in our conscience. Therefore, transgressing a law of God hurts our conscience. That's our judge. When we start weaving that together, when we finally link the dots, we understand. When we talk about judgment, punishment, crime, condemnation, we are talking about our conscience that hurts when we transgress the laws that are printed within ourselves. Because in some point we will recognize that doesn't feel right. Life will always prevail. The life of the Spirit is immortal. We know as well, by all the knowledge that we have, that even when there are very contentious relationships, when there may be an attempt of a spirit not allowing others to return to the corporeal life to live their existence, even when they have the intention to interrupt the life of somebody that they accepted from the spiritual life to bring to their home, and one day they say, no, I can't. I just happen to work as a counselor, as a psychotherapist. Sometimes some examples are important to be shared because they show the level and the depth of those experiences. Men and women come to my office that it was not one that was even close to an experience of what we call the abortion, that doesn't feel pain. No one. But you know, one of the worst pains that they go through is the pain of hiding from those who they know is going to judge them. They have nobody to talk to within their own home, in their own families, with their own friends. That is the pain of not being able to find a way to have hope in life after something as difficult as that they experienced. The conflict that they go through because they were raised in some specific religion, faith, or rules within their homes or society that tells them that from now on you are doomed. No matter what you do, no matter what you try. Our judgment hurts more. Much more. I had the opportunity in the middle of this, existence that I have. I was working in actually an organization that was faith-based, by the way. I was working with people with disabilities. And we had the chance to go to a retreat to another city. If I'm not wrong, it was Sudbury. It was the first time in 48 years. I am 48 years old, which is nothing, right, for this period. But no, I am 48 years old. I'm not a child. And in 48 years, I only saw one organization that welcomes a group of women that had an abortion. Do you know what for? For healing. One, I never forget. I remember when I saw the flyer, and that was a lesson. That was a lesson. Who are we to say anything? What do people need? What do you need? When Jesus comes to the woman and says, what do you need? He's not telling her anything. He's not judging. He's not giving a sermon to her. What happened with the others? Pay attention. You are alive, right? What happened with the others? Go. Go. If that didn't make sense for me before that day, it did. That day, that phrase was imprinted forever, I hope. More recently at home, we've been having lots of conversations at home, and for some reason I talk a lot about compassion. My wife laughs about it because I keep talking in many situations, come compassion. Since 2 weeks ago that I mentioned about one of the professionals that I know that talk about, curiosity and compassion. He's a psychiatrist, worked with people suffering from addictions. He has even a workshop called Compassionate Inquiry. It's like a compassionate curiosity. Beautiful. And that also reminded me, that's how it is important for us to see people and life. Not shy away from it. I could be shying away from talking about it, afraid of potential negative repercussions of me, myself, a man, talking about abortion. And I am. For many people, I will probably be very inappropriate talking about it. But again, remember, I'm trying to make a huge effort to remind myself that we are in a place, reminding ourselves that we are immortal spirits in evolution, learning with life and its challenges, making mistakes, learning from them, and striving to correct them through new experiences that we need to take as divine. To make right what we couldn't do. There is no karma. I'm not coming back. I'm going forward. The aspect of repentance in our understanding differs from karma because we don't go backwards. And I won't fall from the hands of those who I made fall. I'm putting forward, making it right ahead. Maybe the ones that I did wrong with already forgave me and are way ahead of me. It's my time to do good now. It's my time to do right. I will do to the world. I will do ahead. I'm paying forward the lessons. Those are a few of those who reminded me. Those were a few of those who never left my conscience when I was trying to learn about what to say to you all today. All of them told me I could heal because I recognized that I made a mistake. I went back, talked about it, and from them I received the greatest gift that I could have received, which was to start again. Because if we look at the woman who committed adultery, Jesus told her, I just have a guess. She probably heard it. Didn't hear about her anymore. When we look at the prodigal son, who makes all the mistakes, gives in to all the lust that he could have, thinking that earthly pleasures were the satisfaction of life, comes back repentant to his father without absolutely anything. What does his father do? You were dead. Now you are alive. Come to me and we will celebrate. Here, the publican and the Pharisee. When the publican goes to the church, put his head down and say, God, I cannot look at you. I'm a publican. I'm a tax collector. I take money from people that don't have. I am here repentant. I don't deserve to be here. I don't deserve your mercy. While the Pharisee, who was a man of religion and politics, would say, God, thank you very much that I am better than this publican. And here we have Mary Magdalene, who in the eyes of even the apostles was a woman of perverted life. A woman who used her physical beauty to take advantage of people. But a person who was extremely disturbed by a lot of her life, unhappy, unfulfilled, and finds in the pure love that Jesus brings to her the path that led us to become the messenger of Jesus after the resurrection. She was the first person that sees Jesus after Jesus comes back as a spirit, because she was not judged by him. For anybody that had that experience, for everybody that for one reason or another resorts to interrupt something in life, and for whatever reason they regret. And here I am transcending the fact that we are talking about an abortion as an interruption, an artificial interruption of human life. I'm talking about interrupted dreams, that we interrupt ourselves or somebody else's dreams. The interruption of somebody's projects, the interruption of my own. Limiting the opportunities of people to be better. Restraining people, not allowing them to grow and to be the best that they wish that they could be. Including interrupting the opportunity of somebody coming to earth to have a new existence. It is just an invitation to look at life with that curiosity, with that compassion, understanding that our mistakes sometimes are greater. That today, this society that we live is demonizing something, probably masking a lot of our own mistakes that we don't want to admit. While we continue criminalizing and demonizing certain actions and not others. We are to understand that we are not to criminalize or demonize or judge any love, compassion, understanding, forgiveness, mutual respect, collaboration, solidarity are words that those spirits learn the hardest possible way because of their own mistakes. May this be a lesson for all of us, mistaken humans. All of us, mistaken humans. To not judge ourselves. To not fall into guilt. To the point of interrupt our opportunities to grow, to change, to improve, and to evolve. May all of us continue with that thought of love and compassion that Jesus always gave to us. And then we can move forward with that. Thank you very much. All right, I'm supposed to ask if there are questions.
There is one question.
Oh, okay.
What would be the journey of the spirit from reincarnation planning until the actual reincarnation and the connection of the spirit/body?
Oh, that's a beautiful question. Beautiful question. So what we can understand today, what we have in terms of understanding is After we have the plan, and that plan is a collaborative plan, part of us will make a few decisions in terms of how we're going to arrive, who we're going to arrive with, who's going to be mom and dad, are they going to be nice? They're not going to be nice. They're going to take me to soccer or not, like all those beautiful things, After all that planning in terms of how that is going to happen, what happens is, remember that we have the perispirit, which is our spiritual body that is appropriate for every sphere where we are. Our perispirit is a very specialized kind of body that also has cells like the human body. So by the moment that there is that conception, and here that's what the Spiritism will tell us, like going away from controversy, by the moment that there is the fertilization, that is what we call the mitosis, which is like 2 cells. By the moment that there are 2 cells, there is a very small connection between 2 of the cells of the perispirit to those cells. After every single multiplication of cells and division, there is a connection, a progressive connection of the perispirit with this body in formation. That process will start almost immediately. And the spirit itself will go to a process, which is, again, for us, is very difficult to really grasp and to understand, but it goes to a process of condensation and will slowly losing its consciousness, very slowly, until the birth. But also, when the baby is born, which means that our perispirits are connected to that body, and then we arrive in this world, there are still a few more years when that connection between the perispirit and the body will be completed. Some of the readings that we have, some of the lessons that we have say more or less, give or take 7 years because of our level of evolution. We know as well that in more evolved planes, this happens much faster. So let's say that the beginning of that connection and the bonding between spirit and the new body, plus who is generating this body, right? There is also that connection with the person who is generating the body, the mother. It starts being developed. So that psychological atmosphere between the future baby and the mother starts being connected one with the other. And then there is the birth. The birth means that the basic connection is done so that the baby can survive out of that biological connection. But then for the final awakening, you take some 6-7 years. And that's why probably some of us will know that some kids, are even watching things and they go experience things 4 or 5 years old, 6 years old. And then you meet them when they are 8, 9. Oh, remember that? No. That there is a kind of a shift sometimes that they seem not to remember. Oh, first time that I'm watching. No, you watched that many times. No, it's first time. Sometimes there is this change because then there is that kind of final connection. And then we both kind of, we understand that we finally arrived in the incarnation with all our, brain developed, with the memories that we can retain, and with all the characteristics that will develop our personality. So it's a very complex process. I hope that in this first 2 minutes, I could explain at least in, summarizing details how this happens, right? Yes?
In this process, is the same that when embryo is made in the lab for the connection of the spirit?
So it's also a very important point. What happens is, if in the Spirit's book is also said that there are certain bodies that will not have a spirit. That's what we call stillborn. There are babies that are born that are not, let's say, alive. That is the body. But some of them were never made to become a person. So, no. When that embryo is created, not necessarily will be attached to a spirit. But for the spirit to reincarnate, there is a need for the body. The other side is not necessarily true. For the spirit to reincarnate, I need a body. But for the body to exist, not necessarily need a spirit. This body will have a limited, restricted, probably short life. Sometimes, unfortunately, that's what we see happening when even a naturally generated body will not survive. But those experiments, those lab experiments, let's say, are part of a scientific process. And we know as well that spirituality is helping and supporting all these advancements and many times inspiring those researchers, and will allow that biological experiment to happen, but not necessarily is going to attach a body there, because knows that many of those experiments are never going forward more than a few weeks or a few months, and they will interrupt that. The researchers themselves will stop the process. There is something about the bioethics, the ethics of those processes that say after a certain time, the research is also interrupted on purpose, because then we don't get to the risk to enter a more philosophical, moral, ethical dilemmas. Is it alive? Because now we entered on that. So not necessarily those embryos will have a spirit, but if it is viable from the point of view of having a human life there, I don't think it would be impossible. The spirituality would probably, if it is part of the program that spirit will then occupy that body for whatever reason, for the advancement of our humankind, learning how to live in this new humans. Recently we're learning about the experiments that are being done with fetus that are being corrected. The 23rd chromosome is being removed, right? So then they are trying to reverse what we call today Down syndrome. So those are all also experiments. When is this going to happen? Very soon, probably. But again, are those organisms going to be viable or not? God knows, because they may allow for a spirit then to occupy that body for whatever reason that exists in that moment, for whatever purpose. Nothing happens without a purpose, or not. If we remember Dolly, the sheep there, they were there. We know that the animals don't have a spirit, but they have a spiritual principle. They were animated by a spiritual principle, and they were cloned. In theory, it is possible, but not necessarily in the moment when they are in the lab. No, they're only artificially created. Look at the progress, discarded, documented for the future. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Thiago. I'm sorry. Thank you, Thiago, and thank you everyone that joined us online today, and who is here, we will prepare for our passes.